Let's go. All right. We are live finally. Honey, if you knew what it took to get in here today, happy Wednesday, happy pre new moon, and all of that good stuff. Let's get started today. I won't be long, but I hope to be strong. And I have to come on in saying I do not own the rights to this music, but I do want it to be my warm up. Hey, hey, hey. I don't own the rights to this, but we're gonna talk about this today, honey. To the MI, cat like a semi. Niggas know my car, what you get mine. All right. That's just my opening. Let's talk about this word, this energy. Okay, let's get on in here. Let's get in here, y'all. Let's get in here. I think I'm gonna add to this particular live because Facebook has been doing a little bit of a dance on my end. So let's just talk about it. It's our Womanhood Wisdom Wednesday. For those of you who don't know me, I am LaTanya Taylor, affectionately known as the RevCoach, the Juicy Spirit Mama, the priestess of purpose, pleasure, and passion, and profits. And so today we are coming riding in on this Yemiya Oshun feast day. That's why I have on my touch of gold to honor the energy, and of course my purple. Hey cousin, how are you? Thank you for joining me here. So I want to get in here real quick and talk about this bitch energy. Let's talk about bitch energy. Let's talk about bitch energy. Let me know if you are in the room today, because this is a grown conversation and it is also an elevated conversation, y'all. Well, at least we're going to elevate it. So let's talk about this word bitch. Someone call you a bitch. Someone refers to you as a bitch. Sometimes they're fighting words. Sometimes it's words of affection. And sometimes it is just a straight out attack, right? Some people hold themselves on some moral high ground because they don't particularly use it. And as you start to study and know the meaning of words, you absolutely are mindful about how you use it. Just like with anything else, a lot of times we don't know the etymology of the word, the context, the history of the word. And so when words are repurposed and given new meanings by other people, we have to decide whether we are going to define this for ourselves. And so as we look at this new moon energy that we are riding in on today, around Virgo energy, and I need to just pull this up real quick, turn my phone back on. I got so many devices. You know, Kevin Gates said, I got 2 phones. I got 3. So that being said, I wanted to come in all seriousness because we are in the middle of our 21-day shift everything challenge, and for some reason my phone don't want to come on. And so a lot of my sisters who are always doing the work and taking themselves on already know this. Any woman who's done the rites of passage with me, she already knows this. We go through a whole process of being able to understand the inner bitch and to reposition the inner bitch. I want to tell y'all a story real quick of why I feel it's necessary to share this, particularly on this particular new moon in Virgo energy. How many of you know anything about Virgos? You know, how it's particularly when we talk about mother energy, right? And when we talk about mother energy, everybody likes the Oshun energy. Everybody wants the sensuality, the abundance, the prosperity, the fertility of Oshun energy. However, we don't oftentimes deal with the part of Oshun that carries the machete. So some of you may say, well, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about that. That's not my tradition. That's outside of what I believe in. No worries. That part is not for you. But what you do have is a mother. Okay, what you do have if you're a woman is you too are oftentimes will move in and out of this particular energy at any given time, right? But what energy? How do you hold it? What do you do with it? How do you feel about it when somebody talks? Oh, okay, so we got some Virgo mothers. I got a Virgo mother. Okay, I have my spiritual mother is a Virgo, and it seems like I'm surrounded by Virgos. And at one point, Virgo energy used to be a test for me because it is a certain kind of energy. When we talk about mothers, again, when we talk about the horoscopes, I like to talk to you all on several different levels. I consider myself spiritually multilingual because I have traveled through different traditions. And so someone who has not traveled outside of their faith walk or spiritual tradition may hold a conversation like this on one level. I want to invite you to consider not to just hold it on one level, but to look at the different levels. And this is why oftentimes my videos are a little extended, because oftentimes I want to talk to when I'm talking to the public, I like to talk on the various levels that a person may be listening from. Why? In education, we call that this differentiated instruction. You know, everybody learns differently. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of it. And if you didn't get the music up, don't trust me, I'm going to put it back on because that Missy Elliott beat is fire. Okay. But when we talk about this season that we're in of shifts, we are going to have to meet different aspects of ourselves where we get an opportunity to reposition and to redefine old paradigms as we have known them. Y'all with me? Y'all with me? Okay. Okay, so good. In fact, if you're watching, put the sign that you were born on, your mother. What is your mother sign? So when we're talking about this whole bitch word, let me put the context. I asked the question. There's the false bitch. There there is the profane bitch, and then there is the sacred bitch. Just like there's a sacred whore, just like there is a sacred category for all of what we're talking about, many of us have only known the negative version because we often receive information based on the latest edition. Come on now. Whatever the latest edition that was read in your family, that was talked about in your family, if you do not have the ancient and the references, then oftentimes you're operating in the false narrative and not exploring the true narrative. And so when we're talking about mother, many of us still have a false narrative of mother, a profane narrative of mother, or a sacred narrative of mother. But when you look at yourself, what do you have? Do you have a false narrative of yourself, or do you have a sacred, a profane narrative of yourself, or do you have a sacred narrative of yourself? Well, I want to propose to you that many of us have had false narratives when it comes to anything female. And if we have not challenged it or questioned it, when that energy rises up in us or around us, we do not know how to handle it. And so we'll trauma bond around the negative or the false, but we will not explore the sacred oftentimes until it is introduced to us through some other modality. Can you agree? How many of you all have done yoni steaming? How many of you all have ever experienced the rites of passage process? How many of you all have ever had to question parts of your womanhood or your feminine? Okay, I see some Gemini mothers, some Leo mothers, some Virgo mothers. I got some Capricorn mothers on here. All right, now we're in the pocket. We understand. Now, if you have a Virgo mother, then you have already been in some bitch energy. Why? Why do I say that? Because they're different. They're different archetypes of mother, and you were born under a certain feminine archetype. Can you agree with that? A personality trait. Okay, a character. Okay, I see an Aries mother in here. All right. So when you look at the archetype that you were influenced by, girls learn womanhood by the women that are around them. And so when we look at the context of this particular, I don't know why my phone don't want to come on. I told y'all I can't stand the iPhone. I really can't. So when we look at the context of this thing called bitch energy, I don't particularly like it. So let me tell you the story to give you the full context of me even doing this publicly and live. Y'all know if you're a juicy butterfly, so juicy butterflies are in the house, put your butterfly in the comments so I'll know you're here and I can pull on a little energy from you. When we look at this this bitch energy, right? I remember when I was doing spiritual work, leadership development training, and my teacher, my trainer, the one who saw me was the first real man that ever coached me like he did, a master coach. One of the things he said to me was, "You're going to have to get comfortable with your own bitch energy." I was so offended. I was like, "What?" He was like, "Yeah." So he challenged me to do a whole workshop. Catherine, yes, this is inspired by our beloved brother, Ron Davis. He challenged me to do a workshop. And a lot of people didn't want to come to that workshop because it was taboo. I don't know why I seem to be born with the assignment to touch on these taboo subjects like this. And so he challenged me to do a workshop, but of course he wanted me to study. When I say challenge in the context of leadership development training, all these challenges are not always private. So when you're doing the work, sometimes you do this in process and in group. And as I was working through a part of myself that I was accepting, I think I was in a phase of my life where they say, don't cut yourself into bite-sized pieces so that people can swallow and digest who you are. I was just coming in touch with my power. But when I say that, I think I had known it because in my life, I had always been the one to speak up. I have an experience of being a black sheep, or feeling like the black sheep. I definitely have had my own issues around speaking truth to power. Sometimes speaking that truth to power are the people who are put in authority over your life. And so as I was working through that and healing through that, and then going through religion, because religion sometimes tells you how to be nice and how to be appropriate. And so when you're born in the South, a lot of people in the South are big on manners, and you don't say that, oh, you don't do that like that. And for years, I used to hear certain things about who I was. No one, well, I won't say no one. There were a few people who were assigned in my life who saw past the period of my own life where I was struggling, trying to figure out my own pain, my own brokenheartedness, and did not label me as having an attitude and that type of thing, right? And so what I found though is when I started to grow into myself, into my power, I started trying to be more appropriate. I'm born in the South. I'm raised Catholic. I have had different people misunderstand me, still to this day. And so sometimes and it's painful, by the way. How many of you can relate to that? You're a powerful person and you don't want people to misunderstand you, take you wrong, or that type of thing. Not only that, when you start to walk in your power, sometimes people get close to you just so they can get a piece of it, and then they run away. That happens a lot in tribes too, as well. If you have a mother issue or a mother wound, and let me get back on the different types of mother, being around strong women can trigger you. Can you agree that sometimes when you are around a strong woman who reminds you of anything you've ever experienced, it's no different than when a woman has a daddy issue and she gets into a relationship with a man, and that man can trigger up the things that never was healed. You feel me? So what I want to do today is give us the opportunity to take back the power, because we're in a season where shift is happening. And I want to just use the acronym a little bit. I'm gonna give you a little taste of the workshop. It's not like it's secret or anything, but bitch, right? The whole let's use the acronym: B for being, I for in, T for total, C for control, and H for herself. Being in total control herself. So I want to build on that, because beingness is a spiritual energy. And bitch energy in the false narrative is not a spiritual energy. It's ego based. The false narrative holds the bitch energy in ego. The profane narrative holds the bitch energy as projecting it onto someone else, someone who's doing something to someone else. The sacred narrative of beingness is what we call in the Bible the fruits of the Spirit. Or beingness is your characteristics. Beingness is your God-like, your divinity, your divine traits. Can you agree that we all have divine traits? So let's deal with beingness. Now, a lot of times when we're reading and defining words, we tend to look over prepositions and transitional words. But prepositions and transitional words help to tell you a lot, not only about the sentence, but about the context of what you're reading. And so in and of are things to pay attention to. So when you're talking about in, when you're being in, you're not being out. So once again, the false narrative of the bitch is about external, being, trying to focus on external. So even when you see women with attitudes or frowned up, booted up, or women who are acting a fool on reality television or something like that's not in. That's not the inner. That's the out. That's the effect, not the cause. So when you're talking about in, you're talking about cause. Now, those of you who are juicy butterflies, you know what it means to be first cause. First cause is a whole teaching in itself, and I would love to invite you to the Rites of Passage to join me when we relaunch it. Okay. Now, total. Let's deal with total. Why total? Why is it that it's being in total? Why total? Total. What's total? The totality, wholeness, completeness, total, all of it's everything. Well, if you understand first cause, well, let's deal with the false narrative. The false narrative is only a part of a woman. Y'all with me? Are you following the way that I'm delivering it? Talk back to me. Talk back to me. Total. And so when we're talking about total and in the false narrative, it's only a part of. When you see the false narrative, that's only the representative of the woman or feminine energy, because now the bitch word is applied to men if they're acting a certain way, correct? Okay. So then there is the profane narrative. That's when someone is trying to offend you. They want to, and you understand what I'm saying? Okay, good. Thumbs up. I'm following. Good. Yes. All right. What about you on Instagram? Talk back to me. So total. When we talk about total, then I think of the divinity. I think of sovereignty. I think of spiritual sovereignty. Total. Okay. So that's what the sacred means. When in the context of the sacred, when we talk about the totality of anything, we're talking about the totality of everything and the vastness of the universe, of who we are and what we are. Many times we limit ourselves to one portion. Even your family name is not the beginning or the end of you. If God is Alpha and Omega, then when we tap into that divinity in ourselves, then what we're saying is there's no end, there's no beginning. There's vastness, and our womanhood is vast. Okay, so control. I want to stay here for a minute, because when we talk about bitchiness, a lot of times our bitchiness shows up like when we're PMSing. You know how we can who put the anger sign? To be bold enough to tell me why you angry. Who put the anger emoji? Yeah, you don't want to walk into this bitch energy today. so so when we talk about bitchiness, right? And many of us have only known bitchiness as something that somebody is doing to us, a mood, a way that when we're looking at control, we see oftentimes a person or a woman who's out of control. But what's happening internally is she doesn't have control, so she's trying to hold on to the two aspects of her ego. Now let me break it down again: the false, the profane, and the sacred. Do we really control anything except for ourselves? And those of you who are on the self-mastery journey, you are starting to realize that. Or sometimes we have amnesia. We think we're in control. We think that if I do certain things this way, then it'll get me another result. Correct? So that being said, control, the grip, being able to determine the outcome. Okay, and then herself. Of course, herself is you. Not your children, not the narrative that people talk about you. You. Right now, we're in a season where shift is happening on the planet, and the only thing that you can control is yourself. If you are a wife, you understand when you are, and especially if you've been divorced, or especially if your marriage has been tested or tried. Try having a marriage or a relationship where you're trying to control other people. Not a real happy space. When the biggest liberation for me is to understand that those wedding vows, that the traditional wedding vows now, until death do us part, and all those things that seem like it is an oath of nobility, really is an oath of disempowerment. Because there are no guarantees in love. So the idea that you can even control love is crazy. You can't control love. I don't care how long you've been married. Y'all see that Steph Curry's parents, how long have they been married? And now they're getting a divorce. So a lot of times you get taught a theology of sin and hell and damnation, and so now you enter into contracts where if you're my husband, I'm your wife, then I possess you. No, herself on this, in the false, the profane and the sacred, the herself of the sacred is that you possess yourself. The whole movement of being a goddess is not about yoni eggs. It's not about crystals. It's not about all of this stuff that has been monetized on IG, and you got these youngins out here who know how to sell to you. Herself. I'm a journey. I'm a roadmap. I'm a blueprint in my family. The healing that I do for me, it shifts generations, 7 generations before me, 7 generations behind me. So the only person ever that I can control is myself. And when you have little children, you may be able to control them. Maybe. But the false narrative of bitch is the one that is promoted on TV. So now you have young girls with no reference point of what womanhood really is, and we no accountability for the things that we say. My husband and I were talking about how, many of us, Generation X, we come from an experience where you are accountable for what comes out of your mouth. You feel me? And now in this social media world, people are passive aggressively saying things, bitching on their social media, or indirectly addressing people, even confronting people, even calling out people. I see a lot of spiritual people, so-called spiritual people, want to call out other spiritual people in their walk. That's a setup. My mother used to tell me something real powerful. She said, baby, she said, my mama taught me never talk about anybody else's children when you are a mother. Never, because you have children, just keep living. Never talk about somebody else's marriage. If you married, just keep living. Never talk about, because in other words, be careful what you put your mouth on. And one of the things about bitching is a lot of times we're not holding ourselves accountable in our womanhood for what comes out of our mouth. That's why in the 21-day process, one of the things that we're focusing on to build momentum is our mouth, because it's a gateway. So if we don't know words and we're using words loosely and profanely and falsely, how can you get to the sacred? The only way to get to the sacred is you have to travel to the sacred through yourself. If you're traveling through the sacred to the sacred through somebody else, you have their narrative, their version of God, their version of divinity. You do not have your version and your experience. And yes, should we be guided? Absolutely. But why am I talking about this today? Because we are on the energy of a new moon. And some people watch and they don't like it because their Christianity they don't believe in the moon. But yet the three wise men followed the stars. Okay. There's astrology and codology all throughout your Bible. But if you are only living through your theology of baby food, you have not graduated into manna. And therefore, when it's time to manifest, we get thrown off and wondering, what do I do? What do I do? Because our narrative is still based off of something out there and not who we are in here. I'm still going to get to mother in a minute. So Virgo new moon is a pre-shadow period of Mercury. We're getting ready to go into a Mercury retrograde, and Virgo is an earth sign that is governed by Mercury. Very interesting mix, isn't it? It's not the same as your Gemini that's governed by Mercury, okay? Now, what does this mean? Because when we start talking about water, air, fire, and metal, and these types of energies, well, science studies water, fire, air, metal. So why don't we study the science of womanhood, the science of our blueprint, the science of who we are? We've been made afraid because we are operating in the false narrative. And that's why it's easy to be offended when you don't know who you are, when you don't know what you are, when you don't know why you are. And so when the inner bitch rises up in you and you don't know how to control her, you don't know how to check that. Come on, yeah, you feel me? You don't know how to. So what it does is it puts us in the position to have somebody else check her. Not only that, some of us have ancestral energy that we are working through. Attachments. Some of us have spiritual attachments that are shadow and dark energy. But if you have been made to be afraid of your shadow self, so let me pause right here, because many people like to come into the light work and like to be love and light, and I know that I could be one of them. I used to be one of them that like to be love and light, right? And so then when my inner bitch would rise up, I didn't necessarily know how to take accountability for her. And sometimes it's not for you. Sometimes this is where elders come in. This is where the medicine men and women come in, because we're cleaning up stuff oftentimes in our bloodline. Women, when you're talking about, I don't get along with women, that's no badge of honor. That's no badge of honor. I see my husband just came in the comments and gave me some love. I really appreciate that, honey. So when we're talking about this, how do you feel about yourself? How are we in touch with our authority? Because now in this season, when it's time for us to show up and make decisions for our family, make decisions for our health, you have the peer pressure of the world of conformity that will have you caving in. But there are some of you and some of us that are going to have to stop cutting ourselves up into bite-sized pieces so that we can fit in. Now, a pre-shadow of Mercury is this is the week to break free from old patterns, repeating patterns, old stories that no longer serve who we are or where we are going or why you're going there. This is the time where of major transformation. Mercury is all about our communication, what we say out of our mouth, what we write down. And this is why the media is so powerful, because the media will have you repeating things that are not true. But because we don't know code, we haven't studied anything, that when certain things are happening, we just repeat it. How many of you have repeated old stories in your family that do not serve you? But then you talk to somebody else in your family and you get another version. How many people in your line are telling old stories about you that no longer apply? In fact, this is one trick and why we have to work through patterns in our family, because most of the time your family will hold you in the last version that you left them in. And this is why when you move into your home state and when you go back around, when you get focused on a goal, when you get focused on breaking generational curses, as you call them, but versus generational patterns, that when you get focused on breaking it, you meet an aspect of yourself, and you will have to move through the false narrative, the profane narrative, and get to the sacred narrative. When you get to the sacred, it's very difficult for somebody else to define who you are or why you are or what you are. It's very different. And it's not overnight. It's not overnight. It's not monkey see, monkey do. Anybody who's in the ATRs, any of the ATRs, you already know that your path is custom to you. But let me continue. In this new moon energy, Carrie Bush says, surrender to what is. When you are the bitch energy focusing on the outside, you cannot surrender to what is. One way to know you can't surrender to what is when you're asking why, or when you're judging somebody else's why, or when you are, why do they have to do that? Why can't they just go get the jab? Why can't they just comply? Why can't they just fall in? Because maybe you were born to interrupt. Now, if y'all hear a little snoring, I got a big old dog right here sitting at my feet, and I guess he's so used to me teaching, he just goes right, he just falls right out. So it's no human snoring. That's a four-legged. So choose to surrender to what is. Choose love over fear. The bitch can't choose love over fear, but let me say something about that. Your anger, your rage, sometimes there is righteous rage that needs to rise up. There's righteous rage. Sometimes that external bitch that we've known, that we've seen out in the streets, that's survival. That's a survival mechanism. That is trauma. That's not the real self. That's not the real woman. And if you've been that bitch, you know how y'all like to say, I'm that bitch? If you've been that bitch in the unhealthy, then it's your responsibility to go clean up and atone in periods like this in your own journey when you have hurt other people. Come on now. But see, we don't want to talk about this in womanhood. It's more popular to talk about being a victim. It's more popular to talk about being cheated on. It's more popular to talk about having a baby daddy that didn't take care of you. But when you are the bitch in total control of yourself, you show up differently. Let me go back to something real quick. Let me go back. This is really, 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 really important. The origin of the word bitch in the ancient and in the sacred texts really has a lot to do with, in ancient Kemet, there was a bitch goddess. She was called the bitch goddess. The bitch goddess is the one who can control dogs. Isn't it ironic? I got a dog sitting down here sleeping right now. Now my dog is a male dog, but we're talking about this energy. In other words, it was a woman who had an influence over four legs. But in this Western culture, they take every word related to the woman. If you don't believe that womanhood is under attack and has been for centuries in the Western world, then you are part of the problem if you do not believe that womanhood has been under attack. And when you see all these sisters now embracing parts of themselves, yoni steaming is not new. It's ancient. Ancient civilizations did yoni steaming. Yoni eggs are not new. That's why when one sister wanted to coin the term yoni, it's like you don't own yoni just because you now open up a shop and put the title yoni on it. It's not new. Orgasmic birth is not new. First cause, because we're first cause. Understand first cause. There's a universal law of first cause, but guess what? The woman is a part of the universal law of first cause. And the first narrative, false narrative that we began to receive about womanhood is through the narrative of Eve. But the Jews have the narrative of there were two women in the garden. Anybody want to put the name in the comments of the other woman in the garden? The other woman is the woman who would not just comply, who would not just go along to get along. Come on, I want y'all to, let's exchange. Those of you all who know this. So when you look at the word that has evolved, not only has that word evolved, so has the word P-U-S-S-Y. That was not a negative. Thank you, Janai. Hey, wait a minute. I love it when my sisters show up. Yes. Lilith, Shanta, you got it. Lilith, Janai, you got it. Lilith was the other woman. There's a Lilith inside of you. But we only accepted the narrative of Eve as Eve being the temptation to Adam. But in the metaphysical, it represents states of mind, states of consciousness. So when we look at Virgo energy, I'm going to close with this. Mother energy. How many of you ever called your mother out her name? Under your breath? I wouldn't do it out loud. But under your breath, because she was showing up as the external false narrative. But the sacred one is the one that will rise up when she sees her baby in trouble and get strength out of nowhere. You need your bitch energy for you. But when you're projecting it onto someone else, you are out of control. And control is found oftentimes through surrendering to what is. Unlock your unlimited power during this time and this season and reclaim your life. I love the idea of reclamation because reclamation is true in spirit, in law, earth law, jurisprudence as well. There are reclamation processes in jurisprudence. But you have to study to show yourself approved. Come on now. Why does the scripture say study and show thyself approved? Because many of us have been spoon-fed what we believe about God, what we believe about love, what we believe about money, what we believe about sex, what we believe about womanhood has all been spoon-fed to us without challenge. So when we tend to feel disempowered, it's somebody else's fault. It's what they did to me. But when you start taking your power, it's not even a whole lot of conversation. How many of you know when you quote unquote, when somebody says you're nagging and bitching? How many ever been told that by a love in your life? But what happens when that woman stops nagging and bitching? A lot of times that's the one that you need to watch. She's not going to keep on saying too much. I know y'all don't like Kels, but he did have a song that says, when a woman's fed up, ain't nothing you can do about it. But when do we get fed up with our own shit? Now you say, okay, what does this have to do with the energy that we're living in? Because there is so much right now in these streets to trigger you, me. There are cosmic upgrades that are happening on the planet. So there will be times when your energy may feel off. But if you don't know the sacred tools, you're not following what's happening. The upgrade, if you are on the planet right now and you intend to be on the planet, your life is purposed. If you are asking questions, if you are the one that in your family that's interrupting the patterns, there are times when you're going to not only seem like a bitch, you're going to seem like an asshole. Are you willing to be that? I want somebody to let me know if you're willing to be that. I'm willing. I want to know, because the little girls, we're going to have to grow up. We're going to have to stop pretending. Hey, I want to know, are we ready to grow up? It's time. It's grow up time. It's put on your big girl panties time. Woo. Okay, you know I can't play too much of it. I just want to know. Because there's a time when Harriet Tubman had to believe, Harriet Tubman would take your ass out if you were going to interrupt her freedom. Harriet Tubman would take the people out that wanted to turn around and run back to master. That's what they say, at least. This is not time for the faint at heart. Somebody said in the comments, I don't want to say your name on the video, but if you're in Rebirth Woman, you already know. She said, I'm sick of myself. Baby, that's a good place to be. Sick of yourself. But can you say that out loud to your lover? Can you say that out loud to your family patterns? When you get tired of being sick and tired. When you get tired of talking about problems. When you get tired of begging and pleading and wanting somebody to save you, but you got to walk up and save yourself, because it was Jesus who said, pick up your sick bed and walk. Before I got on this live, let me close this out real quick. Y'all see I'm sweating. I need my fan. Because the ancestors have been really working with me in the last 24 hours with my own stuff, my own self, because I am a Gemini. So this mercurial energy is really something to work through. How we communicate, how we're being influenced. The very thing that put the spell on us in our culture is the very thing that we're going to have to interrupt. And sometimes that's one step at a time. Sometimes that's one word at a time. Sometimes that's one ritual at a time. Sometimes that's 1 year at a time. Other times it's 1 hour, day by day. Our impatience, our judgment, it is not love. And some of us have only known love that controls you and tells you what to do. Many of us don't even understand our classification in status is many of us are wards of the state. We operate as wards of the state. So you need the state to tell you what to do, what time, how to go to work, how to do this, how to take care of your children. They'll come in and take your children if you don't walk into certain facilities knowing who you are. But that's a conversation for an adept. And when you start the adept journey, you have to be willing to be the neophyte. What happened when Neo was invited to the journey? Neo had already been studying. Neo means neophyte, but when you switch words around, it also spells the one. It's about being the one. You are the one that you've been waiting for in your family. You are the one that sometimes is bringing the message, and sometimes you have to be willing to be unpopular. So this is why our health matters in terms of getting our hormones under control. I learned from Queen Afua that a lot of times when we're having eruptions and upsets, our blood is not clean. Oh God, I could teach on this another while. And if we were in the rites of passage or in a sacred container, I would. But when we are always talking about the blood of Jesus, when we talk about the blood, pleading the blood, but we won't even take time, particularly in a transitional time like this, to clean up our blood. Sometimes our blood needs to be clean. So therefore, your blood determines your hormones. When you go to do Asian medicine, which I particularly like and I'm drawn to, hi honey, you watching your woman? Queen Afua, I remember, I'll tell on myself, so my husband's watching, be authentic, of course. We would have upsets and breakdowns sometimes, and I just couldn't understand why certain times of the month certain things would happen. And I mentioned this to Queen Afua, and she told me, she said, this is what's happening. Many of us, we don't have a practice. We're just jumping up and running into our lives because we're in survival mode. We're operating on somebody else's narrative of who we are and how we're supposed to be. My husband and I were talking this morning, and we were even talking about school. And we were talking about how school is an invention. Do y'all know the purpose of school? Do you know what the word what the word grimoire means? And grammar? The grimoire. And so you're around here afraid of the sacred, afraid of nature, afraid of doing sacred work, because they've made you afraid because of the false narrative. And so therefore many of us are afraid of ourselves, and we're afraid to do the cleanup work of our own blood, of our own healing, of confronting the narratives in our family that's not going to put us in the position to be economically sound, to be wise in how we raise our girls. When we look at Generation Z, when we look at millennials, a lot of those girls don't respect what we say because we've been saying one thing out there in the world. We've been mastering how to get the bag, but then when we're at home, we don't drop down our bags. All our bags show up. And it's nobody else's responsibility, not even your husband, not even your mother. Because some of us are adopted or don't know who your father is. And so because you don't know who your father was, are you going to live in that narrative? Because your mother didn't graduate from college, are you going to live in that narrative? Even in the narrative where there's a narrative too, where brothers also have to confront. Well, I didn't grow up with my daddy, so I'm going to be there for my children. And so there are men who have been abused by women who are operating in bitch energy. Wounded bitch energy. I don't know how much this is going to be bleeped out. And I can assure you that you can join my Inner Circle Rebirth exclusive, because this teaching will not, I'm hearing that it's not going to be on my YouTube channel. It will be in my Patreon, and it will be in Rebirth Woman. And if you want to know where those are, go to LaTanyaTaylor.com. But also in the comments, we are doing a 21-day challenge. How many of you all know why I'm fanning? Not because I'm menopausal. I hadn't even hit menopause yet, but anybody know why I'm fanning? Anybody that knows me or knows energy, what this is? In the old church, Antoinette said, uh-oh, she's fanning. She knows why I'm fanning. In the old church, anybody from Union Temple Baptist Church, where I sat in the pulpit, the elders in the church would tell you, baby, don't fan the energy. Don't fan that because they knew that this is spiritual energy. It's not just me through it's moving. Yeah, I'm moving energy. Yes, but that's one thing. But everything you don't move on for the public. So this bitch energy. Oh, we better get acquainted with it. We better get acquainted with it. Because the ones that we avoid, what we resist, will persist. And this is why, sisters, we have to protect our nervous system. This is why we have to know how to take care of our families and grow herbs and go into return to nature. Many of us only know how to go to the grocery store. Hell, I'm one of them. But I saw my grandmother get up and go pull up things from her garden. My grandmother was the one who told me to look at the almanac to understand the seasons and the time. Why? Because I come from the Choctaw lineage. I speak them into this atmosphere right now. I come from medicine men and women. And so do you, many of you. But we've been made too afraid. So you don't trust your immune system. Well, you can't trust your immune system if you have not ever trusted yourself or who you are. Another time, right? Another subject, another time. So, oh yes, someone said in the comments, my grandmother had a full garden. Yes. You think your grandmother, just watching your grandmother did that, didn't affect your DNA? You know, I normally only do this on I'm not going to do it because then I'll start calling forth other energies for me to work with in here today. But I want to encourage those of you who are on the self-mastery journey, who are being the change and the shift that you want to see in your generation, that we have to show up differently daily. We need a daily practice. You need to be in relationship with people who are going to challenge you. A lot of times we just judge them and run from them. And then you got to hear it somewhere else and hear it again and hear it again. But oftentimes you heard it the first time. But cognitive dissonance and fear will block our receptivity to our own divinity, to our own solution. In other words, we are our own solution. Nobody is coming to save us. So, are there any questions? I would love for you, there's still time to jump in this 21-day process. A lot of times y'all don't see me out here just putting stuff out there because I'm not trying to monetize what God called me to minister. Ooh. I'm not just trying to monetize who my assignment. But when you come into the sacred container, because many of us don't even know what a sacred container is anymore, and you don't want to invest in yourself, so you get what you put into your divinity. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. But how many of you can testify that when you start to invest in what it is that you need to grow yourself, your love, your sex, your money, your marriage, your children, when you start to invest, and you will tithe many times before you will invest in a business teacher. We're doing a business incubator, and a lot of sisters beat themselves up because they don't know how to do something, and I did too. And that's why I created the business incubator, particularly for spiritual people who have spiritual businesses, is because somehow we go to these schools, we have these degrees, and we think that we're supposed to know. No, there are things that we are supposed to learn, and there are things that we are supposed to unlearn. And a part of it is breaking the habit of being yourself, your false self, your profane self, and standing in the true, authentic birthright that you are called to live in, not to struggle in, not to survive in, not to be pushed around in, not to be terrorized by fear. So, are there any questions? Are there any questions? Because I usually get in here and get on out. I was about to close it down at 30 minutes, but I hope that in closing, that this is something that you will explore more. This is something that you will be willing to study. Study and show thyself approved on every level. Anything that you desire. Don't just try to duplicate what you see somebody else doing. That's out of order. Well, let me say this. Sometimes you need to do that. Some people need to do that just so that they can be humbled enough to come back and then ask for help and support. So I would love to invite you to join the 21-day process. The link is in the bio. It's a shift camp. I like I told the folks who are participating in the shift camp, it's a choice to shift. And it's a tool to shift. Everybody doesn't have the tools to shift. So when I'm talking about shift everything, do you know how many people are afraid of that? Because you don't want anything to shift. It's our holding on to control that is going to keep us repeating patterns. I decided to release some things. There are times when I've had to pray some prayers differently. I remember when I was getting on my prayer call with my ministers, and I found myself praying about the same thing over and over again. How many of you find yourself praying about work, but your prayers are prayers of worry? Your prayers are prayers of begging and moaning. And so therefore, when it's time for you to stand up and speak over your life, you don't even have any power. So I invite you to join us, because one of the ways we're building momentum in this 21 days, we're only on day 3. I launched it on Sunday. Go watch that live. Go check out last week's live on my YouTube channel, Rebirth by LaTanya Taylor. Just go there. And if you don't have the money, get into the energy. If you don't have the money, get into the time. People who say they don't have money to invest, then invest your time. There are enough free resources in this age of information for us not to stay in ignorance. There are enough free resources in this age of information. Anybody that is in this phase, in this time period, and they don't know, they don't want to know, and let them be, and focus on yourself. Be in total control of yourself. And it's not as easy, it's easily said than done, because we are a loving people. And in our love, oftentimes we want to rescue someone else before we want to put the oxygen mask on someone else before we even know or believe that we can breathe on our own. So thank you so much for joining. I would love for you to come into Shift Camp. DM me if you have any questions. I am pretty accessible, but I ain't gonna have no whole coaching session now. That ain't what I do. In no DMs. But come on in the room. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Come on. That's what my ancestors are singing through me right now. Come on in the room. You got to come in the room, the upper room. The upper room. Let's go higher. Let's take and redefine everything higher and shift everything. You are the domino. You are the domino. I love you, and there's nothing you could do about it. I'll see you on the other side, and let's jam on out of here. You know they're gonna mute me out, but that's what it is. Hey, hey. See you on the other side. See y'all on the other side. Ciao.